All right, Shalom. Before I begin this lesson, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha Kodash. I'd like to say double honors to my teachers, the apostles, the bishops, and elders of Great Millstone. And I'd also like to say Shalom and salutations to the elect that's out there preaching this word in truth and sincerity. I'm the brother Squat, one of the brothers from the branch of Great Millstone, Montreal, and I'm back once again with another lesson. And this lesson that I'm going to be getting into today is going to be entitled Speech Etiquette, right? And I'm going to get the definition of what speech etiquette is, which is pretty much self explanatory, but for the sake of edification and teaching, I'm going to bring out the definition of what speech etiquette means. All right, so this is the definition of speech etiquette in the Google definition. It says speech etiquette refers to the set of cutlery accepted verbal and non-verbal rules used to establish respectful communication, including greetings, apologies, and active listening. Key elements involve using polite formulas, maintaining appropriate volume and tone, clear articulation, and adjusting language based on social context. I, IG, formal, professional, or social. Right. So that's the definition of what speech etiquette means, right? And the scriptures, you know, uh, they do encourage speech etiquette as part of character development, man. You know, and Lord willing, that's what I'm gonna get into and break it down. And as always, Lord willing, it'll be edifying to the elect. All right. So let me begin with it. A point here. It says clear articulation and adjusting language based on social context, IG, formal, professional, or social. Right. So you being able to gauge, your setting, your social setting, your atmosphere, man, or for lack of better words, to simply put, reading the room, right? Knowing what uh room you're in and knowing how to conduct yourself in that room, right? So let me get this in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3 and verse 1. It says, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Verse 7, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak, right? Oh, something that came to mind too is Paul, the Apostle Paul, right? He said, matter of fact, let me get the precept instead of just quoting it. Right, so you basically being able to adapt is important, right? Because Yahweh Shai told us that as well. He says, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And a serpent is slick, right? He understands his surroundings and he moves accordingly. And we're to be like that. He's wise, he's smart, right? And another character trait of a serpent is the ability to be able to adapt to his circumstance or situation or his field or his surroundings, right? So this is uh, Salakia, bear with me in all things into man. Yeah, so yeah. Yep, First Corinthians 9 and verse 20. Let me see where I should start. 9 and verse. Right. Matter of fact, I'm start at 19. It says, "For though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain the more." Right. It says verse 20, "And unto the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. To them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. To them that are without law, as without law, being not without law to the Most High, but under the law of Hamashiach, that I might gain them that are without the law. To the weak became I as weak, that I might gain the weak. I am made all things to all men, that I might by means save some. And this I do for the gospel's sake, that I might be partaker thereof with you." Right. So Paul was able to pretty much adapt and carry himself or conduct himself the same way, with the same way, uh as the people that he was around. Right. To the Jews, he pretty much dealt with them like Jews. Found common ground with them. you know Spoke particular things with them, not only the Jews liked. you know Pretty much took that. Or like the barbarians, there's another precept that speaks about a barbarian. He was dealing with the barbarians like a barbarian. And today, right, how we could put that into perspective is being around niggas, man, and gremlins. Right. You don't act. You be respectful, but you could throw a little bit of slang in there too. When dealing with niggas or talking to niggas or being in a room with you know YNs, man. Right. But then on the flip side, on the contrary, if you're in a professional setting, right, you're not gonna act like a nigga, but you're gonna fit into that room that you're in, right? So that's the point I was making. Um, so from there, let's go to the book of, right. So yeah, being able to fit into the room you're in, and reading it and fitting in and adapting to it, right? Um, so let's go from there to the book of Job. Matter of fact, before I get that, let me get um this right here, dealing with speech etiquette, right? So this is the book of Sirach, verse 5 and verse 13 in the RSV. It says, "Honor and dishonor come from speaking, and a man's tongue is his downfall." Right. So your tongue and the words you speak, they hold weight. They're powerful, and people could gauge and filter out what sort of person you are based upon how you speak, right? How you deliver your tone, you know, and so on and so forth, right? But that's important. Those are things that are important, and if they're mastered, you know, um, you have a better time in this world, man. Less hell, so to speak. All right. But so Sirach 37 and 18 in the CEBA version, it says, "The tongue poses four possibilities: good and evil, life and death, and their continual master is the tongue." That's right. You know, so you could yield good fruits or evil fruits from what you speak and how you speak it, how you deliver it. You could yield life or death, right? From your words that you speak. And that goes to show you that these rappers don't understand, these modern day rappers, they don't really understand that aspect of things. The fact that, the thing that they're talking about could come upon them, you know? They don't understand the power of the tongue. Um, and also knowing when to speak. Matter of fact, that's also something that's important. Being able to gauge when to speak, especially as a young man. Um, but then also knowing, yeah, reading the scriptures speak about in due season. A word spoken in due season. Matter of fact, let me get that. I believe I have it written down. You know what? Before I get that, let me get the book of Job and just build it off from there. So this is the book of Job, um, chapter 32, and I'm gonna start off verse 4. And this is Elihu, which was a young individual, right? And he waited till Job and the men that were over him to finish speaking, so that he gave his 2 cents, right? But a matter of fact, I'm just gonna get into it. Job 32:4. Now Elihu had waited till Job had spoken, because they were elder than he. You know, um, when Elihu saw that there was no answer in the mouth of these three men, then his wrath was kindled. Right. So Elihu was young; he was the youngest amongst them, and he waited patiently until they each finished speaking, so that he could give his 2 cents, because he was younger. Right. And this is a job well done by Elihu. Why? Because that's a part of speech etiquette. That's a part of understanding um, proper conduct. You know, and it's actually in the law for us to reverence men that are older than us, man, and respect them and treat them a particular way, right? Because of their age. Matter of fact, let me get that real quick. This is the book of Leviticus 19. 19 and verse 32. It says, thou shalt rise up before the hoary head and honor the face of the old man, and fear thy power. I am Yahweh. Right. So, the elderly, the hoary head that's going into the elderly, the old men, we're supposed to treat them a particular way, because of their age, man. Reverence and respect them, right? It's a part of our customs, right? And that's what Elihu did by refraining to speak and interrupting, you know, um, the elders, or the men that were older than him in his setting, right? Yeah. So going on, it says verse 6, Job 32:6. It says, and Elihu, the son of Barashal the Buzite, answered and said, I am young, and ye are very old. Wherefore I was afraid, and durst not show you mine opinion. Why? Because he was young, right? And he applied this precept right here. Sirach 32 and verse 7. It says, speak, young man, if there be need of thee, and yet scarcely when thou art twice asked. So in the midst of elders and men that are older than you in the spirit, you should barely be speaking as a young man. And I'm speaking to myself first and foremost, right? But you should be observing and pretty much soaking in what's being said, the wisdom that's being poured out, right? And you should only utter an opinion if it's needed of you, if they require, if they ask of you, right? Verse 8, it says, let thy speech be short, comprehending much in few words, be as one that knoweth and yet holdeth his tongue. If thou be among great men, make not thyself equal with them. And when ancient men are in place, use not many words, right? you know, so don't try to one up an elder. Don't try, I know this, and what about this? What about what I know? That's out of order. That's not respectful. All right. and Elihu understood that. So going back to Job 32:7, I said days should speak and multitude of years should teach wisdom. Right. There's a reason why uh, they're older than you. They know more, the older the thing in the world, the older I become wiser. It says verse 8, but there's a spirit of man, and the inspiration of the Almighty giveth them understanding. Great men are not always wise, neither do the age understand judgment. Right, you know, and you know, yeah, we respect um the elderly, those that are up in age, but you know, not each and every individual that has gray hairs and is up in age is wise. You know, that's in the world. That's what I'm talking. You know, because they don't have this truth. It says verse 10. Therefore I said, hearken to me. I also will show mine opinion. Behold, I waited for your words. I gave ear to your reasons, whilst ye searched out what to say. Right. So that's pretty much the point. All right. So let's go from there to the book of Proverbs. Mm, 25 and verse 11. It says, matter of fact, I want to get it in a different translation. Yep. Proverbs 25 and 11 in the KJV, it says, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. In the NLT says, timely advice is lovely, like golden apples in a silver basket. Right. So, you know, um, knowing your time and season to say particular things is important, right? Because if you say it at the right time, at the right moment, in the right season to speak what you want to say, or just to say what the thing is in that season, it's gonna be more impactful, man. Um, you know, Proverbs 15 and 23. A man has joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season. How good is it? That's right. So a word spoken in due season at the right time, how good is it? Right? For example, brother might be going through something and you encourage him. You give him uplifting words to build up his spirit, right? Or the season to say something that's knowledgeable, to bring out a fact or a fun fact, or bringing out the right precept at the right time to match up with the right statement that was made. You know, that's the due season. And that's good. All right, so let's go. Let's get this. Uh, Isaiah 50 and verse 4, it says, the Lord Yahweh hath given me the tongue of the learned, that I should know how to speak a word in season to him that is weary. He waketh morning by morning, he waketh mine ear to hear as the learned. That's right. So, speaking a word in season to him that is weary during the right season, encouraging him, uplifting words, that's going to bring up the spirit, man, because that's something that he needs to hear. All right. And yeah, so that's pretty much the lesson. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying to the elect. In closing, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rachakudash. Once again, double honors to my teachers, the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone. And in closing, I'd like to say shalom to the elect.